All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Grassland Restoration in Urban and Rural Areas session. Our presentation today will be led by Skylar Ray, who is a conservationist from WHF, the Wildlife Habitat Federation, which is a nonprofit conservation organization that performs on-the-ground restoration, management, and generational sustainability of prairie habitat. Skylar works on conservation planning efforts in the Upper Texas Gulf Coast region, focusing on the greater Houston area. Prior to her work at WHF, Skylar has also assisted with habitat management at the Coastal Prairie Conservancy. She's also worked as a conservation intern with Houston Parks and Rec, and she has also participated in conservation along riparian corridors and the related monarch pathways as an intern with City of San Marcos. Skylar holds a professional science master's in environmental sustainability and natural resource management from Texas Tech, and she holds a Bachelor of General Studies from Texas State in Nature and Heritage Tourism, Animal Science, and Criminal Justice. We are really thrilled to hear from her today and get this great opportunity to learn about grassland restoration. And slide. All of y'all have seen this slide by now if you've been attending our conference, so please plan to stay muted during the presentation. And for this presentation, I would like everyone to turn their video off just to make sure we have plenty of bandwidth. And then we're going to leave ample time at the end of Skylar's presentation for everybody to turn their cameras in on mute if they want. And so we can ask live questions at the end, and we'll also feel free to put your questions in the chat, and we'll keep track of those and go for those at the end of the presentation too. For this session, we'll also have some materials that are going to be shared in Zoom. They're in the resources area. You'll want to navigate through your bottom Zoom menu, the black bar, and find resources. We're also going to have those available after conference. So if you have trouble finding them, or if you can't figure out how to save them, we'll also send out links afterwards. Additionally, in this session, we're going to do some polls, and they're going to be outside of Zoom polls. So we're going to have QR codes for you to scan. You can scan them on your phone, or if that's not working for you, we also can have a direct link. So I will share that link when the time comes. And so we can all kind of have like an interactive part in the session. So that's really nice. So thank you so much for your attention. And now I'm going to hand things over to Skylar so we can get started.
All right, thank you so much, Michelle. Thank y'all for having me here today. I hope you're looking forward to my presentation. Give me just a moment to get my screen shared. All right, can everyone see that first slide? Does it look okay, Michelle? Okay, great. So today I'll be talking about grassland restoration in urban and rural landscapes. So with my work at Wildlife Habitat Federation, I am a conservationist. So I work mainly with public and private landowners to help with conservation planning. Our main area of focus is trying to restore these public and private properties back to native grassland. So this can be done through actually on-the-ground restoration or improved management practices that we put together and customize one-on-one with these landowners that we work with. So the first thing I'd like to do is to kind of get to know my audience and interact with y'all a little bit. So this is the QR code that Michelle had mentioned if you want to try to go ahead and scan this, or she should be putting a link into the chat right now. When you first pull it up, you're probably not going to see anything at the moment because I do have to activate the poll, but I'm going to give everyone just a minute to do that. All right. So can we see this first poll? All right, so it should be activated. So I would like to see how familiar everyone is with grasslands. I'm going to give it a few more minutes because I don't believe that. There we go. So it looks like, for the most part, everyone has a pretty good idea of what grasslands are. Maybe we're all not, pros at understanding what they are, but this is a great for me to know, just because I don't want to repeat too much information that might be just redundant for a lot of people. So, all right. Well, I'm going to assume everyone had a chance to enter their answer. So thank you so much for participating in that for me. We will do a couple more of these throughout the presentation. All right, so what is a grassland? Well, grasslands are considered wide open spaces with very few to no trees. Typically, they have less than a 25% canopy cover. The dominant vegetation is grasses. However, there is quite a diverse mix of species throughout the grasslands that includes forbs, sedges, rushes, and legumes. Prairies typically have less than 10% cover when it comes to tree canopies. And savannas have about 10 to 25% of a tree canopy cover. So a lot of times you'll hear people refer to grasslands as prairies and savannas. They are both grassland habitats, just differ a little bit as far as what the tree canopy cover looks like. So one thing about grasslands is they are very diverse. You can have hundreds of species of different plants that inhabit them. Also, a unique array of animals that actually use grasslands for habitat, including pollinators, which is very important. So here in North America, we have what is considered temperate grasslands versus other areas of the world that have what's considered tropical grasslands. And the main difference between the two is that temperate grasslands do have a cold winter and warm summers, and then some rainfall throughout the year, where tropical grasslands tend to be warmer, drier, and wetter. So there is a diverse mix of grasslands throughout North America. You have your tall grass prairies, you have your mixed grass, you have your savannas, and then you also have your short grass prairies. And we'll go into a little bit more detail with that throughout the presentation. Okay, so here in Texas, we have 10 ecoregions. And I do like to consider Texas a biodiversity hotspot. We are a very unique state because of how many different unique ecoregions that we have. Thousands of native animals and species can be found throughout Texas with over 800 different unique habitats. So, where I'm located, which is in the greater Houston area, I live in the Gulf Prairies and Marshes ecoregion, which is also sometimes known as the coastal plains. And then a little bit more east of me is where you get into your piney woods. Then, if you go a little bit to the west side of Houston, you'll start entering into your post oak savanna and blackland prairie, into your cross timbers and prairies. Then we can go all the way down south to Texas, where you have your South Texas plains, back up to more central Texas, where you'll find your Edwards Plateau. And then going north, you'll get into your rolling plains and high plains. And then all the way far west into Texas, you get into your Trans-Pecos region. So the state is very diverse, and all of these unique ecoregions do have some grasslands that have been there. So historically, about 2/3 of Texas was comprised of prairies, savannas, and other types of grasslands. So here in the far corner is the different ecoregions of Texas. And then as you can see, this larger image is actually a historic picture of where grasslands used to exist. So most of the state was grasslands. And then mixed throughout there, you can see you have your tall grass prairie, which is going to be more in the area that I live, the coastal plains. And then when you get a little further west, you go into your savanna. But then you get into your blackland prairie, which is a lot of tall grass species as well. And then when you move up more to your northern portion of the state, you get into your midgrass and your short grass. And then when you go far west Texas, you get more into your short grass prairie. So very unique habitat. Before European settlement, most of the state was grasslands. However, once European settlement happened, the landscape drastically started to change. A lot of these influences were due to crops, farming, the killing of bison, and then overgrazing of cattle. So after the 1800s, into the early 1800s, the landscape really started to drastically change. So I do have another poll for you guys now. Give me just a minute.
And if you need to use the link rather than the QR code, it's that same link in the chat.
Okay, so how much of native grasslands in Texas remain today? I would really like to hear what you all think. I'll give it just a few minutes. All right, so it looks like most, okay, we have a couple more answering still. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and switch back to the presentation. I hope everyone had a minute to answer. So for those of you who answered less than 5%, you are correct. So actually, as of today, there is about 1% of the original native grasslands that remain throughout the state of Texas. And this is true pretty much throughout North America as well. I chose to focus on Texas just because we are based out of Texas, and so is Keep Texas Beautiful. So about 1% still remains today. And as you can see on this map, all of the purple areas, that was all significantly grasslands before, if you remember the map that we just looked at. And all of that has now been converted or altered. There are some remnant grasslands that remain throughout Texas. However, it is hard and rare to find them. And this is only going to keep spreading as urbanization continues to happen. But most of this has been of the effect of agricultural production, urbanization, and industrial development. So it has quite drastically changed from the landscape we knew way back before European settlement. So why do grasslands matter? Well, I would like to see what you all think first. So this is not a poll. This is your own thoughts. And I would like to hear from you all why you think grasslands are important, why they matter. You can describe it in a single word or two. And you can enter multiple answers if you would like. And so we should be able to start seeing collectively some of your inputs show up on the screen. Water retention.
We're not seeing the screen with the results.
Is the screen not showing up?
It's showing your slides still. Yeah.
Oh,
You might need to move it or reshare.
1 second then. Let's try that. Did that show up? Okay,
I see it.
great. Thank you for that, Michelle. So these are all great answers. Biodiversity, that seems to be one of the more common inputs. So as people start entering, the larger word that pops up is because more people have entered that word. So you see here a lot, we have biodiversity, which is absolutely true. Grassland habitats are one of the most unique, diverse ecosystems, and they really do provide so many benefits to so many different species of animals and plant life. Water retention, I really like that. That seems to be a very popular answer as well. Also very true, and I will talk about that a little more in my presentation. So we have pollinators. That's also great. Threatened species. I like that. Very good. So all of these are really great answers, and all of them are true. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this and move on to my next slide, where we can talk a little bit more about the benefits. Michelle, is it showing my slide now again?
It's still showing your poll for me.
Okay.
Maybe give it a second. See.
Okay, what about now?
We're good.
Great. Okay. So the benefits of grasslands. So many of those answers were really great and right on par with what I want to discuss about what the benefits of grasslands are. So here in this image, these are some common grassland plants that you would find. And one thing I really would like to point out is the root system on these plants. So as you can see, these root systems are very complex. And grassland plants are known to have root systems that can grow up to 15 feet long, which is pretty great. Compared to your turf grasses, so in the area I work with and working a lot with private landowners, I commonly see Bahia grass and Bermuda grass, St. Augustine. All of those turf grasses, their root systems are substantially different, and they're only about 4 inches to 6 inches. So quite a unique differences in the way that their root systems are structured. Because of this root system and the way they are structured, there are tons of benefits that grasslands can offer. Here at the top, I have that they can sequester carbon. So grasslands can actually absorb carbon from the atmosphere, take it in through their roots, and then store the carbon into the soil. They are considered a carbon sink, and that is because they are capable of absorbing more carbon from the atmosphere than what they would ever put out. Um, so pretty important, especially when we talk about climate change and the ways that we need to mitigate some of these changes. Um, Grasslands can actually be very effective in doing so. So a lot of the answers that were received discussed water retention, and this is absolutely true. So grasslands are super important for mitigating drought and floods. Because of their extensive root systems, they are more adaptable to drought. I have seen this firsthand. A landowner that we have worked with has a pretty well-established prairie on his property that is about 5 to 6 years old. And last summer, when we went out there during the drought, it was green. Where everyone else around him, their grass was brown. So I have seen it firsthand, and it is true that they are way more adaptable to the droughts and more tolerant to the heat. So they help with water retention because their root systems are extensive and they can absorb water. So how they do that is they absorb all the water and are able to store it and then slowly release it. Um, so they actually help with flood mitigation because they can capture it and then release it slowly at a later time to help with any flooding around in the surrounding areas. This was also seen during Harvey. So as most of us, I think, know, Hurricane Harvey was absolutely devastating for the Houston area. And there are several prairie sites in Houston that the surrounding neighborhoods around those grasslands did not flood. And we believe a lot of it is because they were right next to these prairies that were able to absorb that excess water, and they helped mitigate the flood from affecting the neighborhoods surrounding them. So another thing that grasslands do is they help remove pollutants as well. So they are really good at absorbing excess nitrogen and phosphorus, which too much in the environment can be very harmful. They maintain biodiversity, which was another factor that most of y'all had mentioned. And they help generate and preserve soil. So because of their roots, they're able to generate further organic matter and create a better, more healthier soil composition. They also help with preventing soil erosion. Their roots can help stabilize areas because it helps compact the soil and holds it together better. And they protect watersheds and streams and rivers. And they do this because they're able to filter out the pollutants before they go into downstream areas. So they actually help with the water quality. And then they also help with pollinating crops. So they're very effective for helping feed pollinators, but those pollinators are also essential for our food. So if we can provide pollinators with grasslands, we're really helping ourselves as well, because we have to eat also. And then, as we all know, they provide a substantial habitat for wildlife. So the list is really extensive on how beneficial grasslands are, and that is why they matter. So ecosystem service values. So an ecosystem service is a positive benefit that directly or indirectly impacts the well-being and quality of life of an individual. So for those who aren't too familiar with what this means, basically we can value an ecosystem by these benefits that they provide. So some of the benefits that we just discussed: carbon sequestration, flood mitigation, crop pollination. Those are all, you can put those into a value for that ecosystem and come up with a general idea of what it is providing to us as humans. So I did give Michelle these attachments, which she provided. Both of these are through a couple resources. Texas A&M Natural Resources Institute did a ecosystem service values throughout the state of Texas on different ecosystems. And as you can see, statewide, there was a mean average of $629. This is $629 per acre per year of what is provided in ecosystem service values, which can add up pretty quickly, especially when we're talking about large acreage. The other source that I provided is through Texan by Nature, which is a recent report that they just released for return on conservation. They do a really good job of discussing not only how investing in ecosystems can provide a overall greater return because of the ecosystem services that they provide, but they also do break it down into the values of those ecosystems too. And I would like to say that a lot of these studies that have been done, they're really great at giving a baseline right now of what can be provided and how we should be valuing these ecosystems more, but they're not fully complete yet. When I've read through a lot of these reports, there is some data that is kind of inconclusive at this time just because there isn't enough research behind it for them to assign of value to certain items at this time. So I do think right now we have a really great baseline of showing how important these ecosystems are and how valuable they are to us as humans. But I think as time goes on and more data and research is available, these numbers are going to significantly increase. So natural resources are sources of life. It is our goal to improve our quality of life through restoring our natural resources. So with part of what I do with Wildlife Habitat Federation, we focus a lot on the natural resources. So it's not just about, okay, let's restore this to native grassland, but we want to make sure that we are improving the overall habitat and restoring those natural resources. So those natural resources include soil, water, animals, plants, and humans. So all of those components are part of what we do, that we are trying to improve habitat for the overall goal of improving the natural resources as well. So how we do that is we work with both public and private landowners to restore their property to the highest ecological function. We are available at no cost to the landowner to provide this technical assistance. We do this through best management practices. Some of these practices can include regenerative agricultural techniques. For those who are not familiar with this term, regenerative agriculture is basically focused on restoring soil health and using agricultural practices in the most sustainable way possible. So some of these strategies that we use for that include adaptive grazing plans. Overgrazing tends to be a large issue throughout Texas and I'm sure other areas of North America. We apply cover crops. So cover crops have been an effective method to actually help improve soil health. And then we use a no-till drill. So if you're not familiar with what a no-till drill is, it is a piece of equipment that is able to drill into just really the top soil layer. And we highly recommend it when you're planning on putting down native seed. because it's able to put the seed just into the very, very top soil, um, and then goes over it so that way the seed can germinate. So that way it's not too far into the ground or it's not just right on top of the soil, but it also doesn't create a disturbance, which is a very key part of using a no-till drill. A lot of the old school farming methods, they are highly disturbant to the soil. So it can create more of an issue for the organic matter in the soil, and then also introduce more invasives whenever you're really disturbing the area. So we also focus on restoring native habitat, and this can be vastly different depending on the project that we are working on, but we do this through brush management, invasive species control, prescribed burns, and then of course native seeding. So where these projects kind of differ is with brush management, we're going to talk about that a lot if, we have an area that was historically grassland, but now because of woody encroachment, which basically means woody species have kind of taken over. We're going to need to go through and really kind of clear out that area and open it up so we can create more of a historic grassland habitat in that. Invasive species control, this is really focusing on, non-native grasses that are more harmful and actually create degradation to the habitat. So a lot of times this includes Johnson grass, King Ranch bluestem, Clayburgh bluestem. The list goes on and on about the many invasive species that you can deal with throughout the state. So with WHF, we will go out, talk to a landowner, do a site assessment. This is where we provide technical guidance to the landowner through on-site consultations. We will look at the possible land use issues, opportunities, and solutions. We then work with these landowners to create a habitat management plan. This is basically a conservation plan with the overall goal to improve the habitat and the natural resources present. And we'll discuss with the landowners kind of the different ways to go about that. Then after that, when the landowner is ready, we will actually help with implementation. So this is boots on the ground, actually putting the work in to make the habitat better. So how we do that is we work with other contractors where we can get them out there to help with whatever has been planned for that property, invasive species control, brush management. If you're wanting to do more of a planned grazing regimen, we can help you with that, prescribed burning. So we're there from point A to point B to address the issues, plan the solutions, and then actually help make that happen. So part of what we do is really focused on the native plants that are supposed to be in that ecoregion or at that project site. And one thing we like to focus on is making sure that we have pollinator friendly mixes. So we do use typically a native grass seed mix where we include several different species of forbs as well for the overall benefit for wildlife and pollinators. So we try to incorporate annual and perennial forbs. This is to really ensure that there is a blooming period and floral resources available throughout the pollinator year. So this is just kind of a little chart here that shows a few different species and then when their bloom period is. And one thing with pollinators is it's really important to make sure that they have some floral resources available throughout that entire season. So you don't want to just plant, you know, species that are going to bloom in the early spring. You don't want to just plant species that are going to bloom in summer. You want to ensure that there is a coverage throughout the season and some availability for pollinators. Um, excuse me. The other thing when we discuss native seeding, you know, you can go out and you can buy a native seed mix and you can plant it, and you might get some results, you might not get any. And the reason for this is going back to what we discussed about how diverse the state of Texas is there's not really a one species that fits all. Um, there are several different species that have certain ecotypes that are very important to note, and to make sure that you are including the correct ecotype for the region that you are located. So with the work we do is we will create custom mixes based off the ecological site descriptions of where your project is located. This gives a pretty good general idea of historically what would have been there, what the area is like. We also look at different soil types. That is also very important. Certain species, if you have more sandy soil or if you have more clay soil, certain species might do well in both. Certain species might do well in one or the other. Also, is the area, does it have wetter areas within that project? Or is it all really upland prairie that is going to be dry most of the time? There are certain species that do better in wetter areas that are more obligate, and there are certain areas that do better in more drier areas that lean more towards the facultative upland type species. So it's very important that when you're creating a mix and you're planning to seed, you want to take into account all these different, all these different items to make sure that you're selecting the best seed that's going to actually do the best. If you just go buy a seed mix that says it's native seed, yes, you might have a few things pop up and do really well. However, it would be better to customize this mix and select it based off of the region and area that you are and what soils that you have. So as I mentioned before, we do work with both public and private landowners. So we are available to help in more urban settings. And this is just a couple examples of some urban projects that we have done. We are able to help with pocket prairie establishments if you're wanting to create more of a wildflower area that's focused more on pollinators. We can do that as well. And so I just wanted to include these pictures to show you. These are both in the greater Houston area. And both of these were in the last couple of years, some prairies that we were able to restore and create pocket prairies within an urban setting. So we work a lot with private landowners, which is a very important aspect of what we do. As you know, the state of Texas is predominantly owned private lands. So the fact that we are able to work with these landowners is very important to be able to help educate them and also give them the opportunity, the guidance and assistance that they need to help restore their habitat. So this is an example of a landowner's property in Fayette County, which is a little farther west of the Houston area. This first picture is the beginning of the project, which was predominantly just a Bahia grass field. They wanted to restore it back to native prairie. This middle picture is the in-between, where we were able to apply a cover crop. And so that's the cover crop during that phase. And then this last picture is the final product now, of once we've seeded these grasses and these forbs, they have now become more established. So pretty cool to see how we got from point A to point C throughout this whole process. So how can you help restore grasslands? I know not everyone here might not, have land, aren't able to restore it, but there are other ways that you can help out if that is not the case. One is by planting natives. Even if you have just your backyard, you can definitely establish a little pocket prairie. And that is super beneficial because you're helping pollinators and you are helping the soil health if you're just even a little small pocket prairie. So definitely, I highly recommend planting natives. You can identify invasive species. I shared a link with Michelle for a really good resource here in Texas that can help you identify invasives. This is super important if you're not familiar with what an invasive species is. It is not just a non-native plant. It is a non-native plant that does harm to the overall environment. There are some non-native plant species in Texas that are not considered invasive. And they're okay. I still wouldn't say plant them because they don't provide the same amount of habitat that natives do. But an invasive species, the key word is that it does harm and it will invade, it will take over, and it will cause more harm to the environment and the native species that are supposed to be there. So if you can familiarize with yourself with invasive species and remove those from your backyard, I would highly recommend doing so. And the resource that I sent to Michelle is a good way to go about that. You can donate to organizations involved in restoration. If you do not have the means to work on land yourself and implement anything yourself, then definitely just donating and helping organizations that are involved in restoration be able to do this work is very important. And then you can also spread the word. So if you have a friend who's never heard of grasslands or the ecosystem service values that they provide, please go tell them about it. Go have a chat with someone after this presentation today, later this afternoon. Tell them what you learned. Spreading the word is so helpful and more beneficial than you think, because it's our way of being able to reach out to more people and get more people on board and understanding why these ecosystems are so valuable and so important and why we need to be doing something about it. So our work is funded. We are a nonprofit, so we are grant funded, and a lot of our work is based off donations as well. So some of our key funders are Texas Coastal Prairie Initiative, the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and the Natural Resources Conservation Service. So the Texas Coastal Prairie Initiative, I did send a couple flyers to Michelle that she, I think, attached as well. This is specifically more focused on the area that I am in, the greater Houston region, to help restore coastal prairie back to its original native habitat. And you can look at that flyer. There are specific counties for that area. If you're interested in applying for any habitat funding, we can help you do so through the Texas Coastal Prairie Initiative. We also are funded by the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and are currently working with the Working Lands for Wildlife Initiative, which is focused also in the greater Houston region, but going a little further west of Houston. It's like a 17 county area that we cover to help landowners get into that initiative. which is really focused on improving habitat for the monarch butterfly and the bobwhite quail. And then we also are funded by the Natural Resources Conservation Service, that we are funded to work throughout the state of Texas to help landowners get the technical guidance that they need and restore their property and improve the habitat. We can also help those landowners apply for several NRCS programs, including EQIP and a few RCPP programs that might be in the area. So we are available as a resource to public and private landowners throughout the state of Texas. We are happy to help you. That is why we are here. So definitely, I highly recommend, if you have land or have questions, please definitely reach out to us. We would love to help you and work with you. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining me today. I really hope you found this presentation interesting and beneficial. I would like to share, this is our general contact information. You can follow us on social media. We also have a quarterly newsletter that goes out. If you would like to sign up and join, that will kind of keep you up to date on what we're up to and any events that we have coming up. And then I will also go ahead and I'm going to stop sharing here, and I'm going to enter my work email into the chat as well, for anyone who wants to reach out to me directly. If you have questions about this presentation that we don't get to today, or want to reach out to me for coming and looking at your property, I would love to help y'all out. So
thank you so much, Tyler. That was a lot of great comments in the chat. If anyone has a question and they want to ask it on camera or just out loud, feel free to unmute and ask your question. We'll give you some time. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone yet. I'm gonna start reading off someone. We got a lot of good questions in the chat.
okay.
Alexa asked, I have had questions and concerns from community members that plant native prairie yards and had complications with code violations. Do you have any resources to provide these residents to communicate more effectively with code officers?
Okay. So what area by chance, Alexa?
Yeah, let's see if Alexa's still on.
It's in Grand Prairie, so it's like residential area.
Okay. Yeah, so I will say that that is a definitely common occurrence when you're in a more urban setting. I've worked within urban areas quite a bit, and a lot of the concern is, wildlife and these prairie areas that look kind of unmanaged, attracting more wildlife and people being afraid of that. I think the best way to kind of address those issues for more urban areas is, one, to try to educate people as much as possible on, the benefits and why the prairie is there, and what it is doing, like what is the purpose. And so when I worked for the city of Houston, we often would try to include signage on our projects that people could read, kind of explaining more in detail of what the project was for and why it was beneficial. And I do think when you have that, it does help people kind of start to understand it more and be less view it less as just like an unmanaged area. They get to see the reason behind it. The other thing I would suggest is, I know within the Houston area, the Natural Resource Department there was actually able to establish an ordinance for land for residential property owners they could apply for kind of a naturalized, I guess, garden certificate that was under that department where they were allowed to have native plants. And they didn't have to follow quite the strict restrictions that you often see with like an HOA. So that is another way to kind of go about it. That would probably take a lot more work to kind of get something established like that, but it is possible to do. The city of Houston did do it, and there are several homeowners in that area that every year have their native plants out and have that certification, and so they don't get quite the backlash from all the city ordinances because of that. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, and then one of the other questions was, do you always need to plant a cover crop before seeding an area of native?
You do not always have to plant a cover crop. We really recommend planting cover crops if the area you're planting, if the soil is really just degraded. And you see that a lot in some of the Houston urban projects that we do, because so many of these areas, the soil that used to be there has changed so much over time because of all the construction. It's kind of a mess of what the soil even is now. And there is a project that I'm currently working on that we are doing two cover crop applications. We'll do a winter cover crop and a summer cover crop to really build up that organic matter in the soil again and create a better, healthier soil. And the reason for that is because with that project specifically, if we were to plant natives on it just right now, they probably would not have as much of a success as we would like. And so the biggest thing with planting natives is if you can prep your seed bed as much as possible to create it to be the best seed bed that you possibly can before putting natives down, you're going to be much happier with your end result, because otherwise you're just going to be battling either poor germination, a lot of invasives still coming back. And that's part of what cover crops do as well, is when you have that extra barrier there, they'll help suppress any invasive species that might have been there before. So no, it is not, necessary. You don't have to do it. Do I think it is a beneficial addition for any prairie restoration site that you're trying to establish? Absolutely.
Great. And then someone had a quick follow-up of what are some example of the cover crops that you use?
Yeah, okay. So we use a pretty different mix, but we do typically will include like milo, which is a sorghum, into our cover crops. We also like to include brassicas. So that includes like your turnips and radishes. We do include those into our cover crops. And the reason for that is because brassicas have actually been able to, there's been a couple studies on how brassicas react to the soil. And so it's said that certain invasive species can actually put out like allelopathic chemicals that can harm natives from germinating and establishing within that soil. And brassicas actually help reduce those chemicals within the soil once you use them in your cover crops. So they will keep the invasives more at bay. And so we always like to include some brassicas into our cover crop as well. And then we'll usually include some sort of grain in it.
Great.
Oh, and excuse me, I'm sorry, and legumes. So we'll use like cow peas and stuff because legumes are super important for nitrogen fixation within the soil.
And then Amy had kind of a similar question to the first question of how do you get elected officials and community members from not liking the unkept prairie look? So I think we kind of covered that unless you have something specific to add if Amy's still on.
No, not really. My answer would be pretty similar. If you can just educate people as best as possible on the benefits, why you're doing it, and everything, I think that's the best way to go about it.
Okay. Then we had a question, can you identify some organizations involved in grassland restoration? You had some on your slide previously. I don't know if you have any more resources to share, but that could be something that maybe you could follow up later with someone. What kind of support, involvement, and or prerequisites are needed from the owners you work with?
Well, there's really no, I guess, prerequisites. Pretty much most of the landowners we work with, if they are interested in us coming out and doing a site assessment, we will. The only thing I will say is as far as applying for some of the costs, the funding sources that we can help you get into. So there's several programs that will help with some of the costs for restoration work. You do have to be registered with the Farm Service Agency. So that is usually the first step when working with landowners if they're wanting to apply for some of those programs, is we'll make sure that they are registered with FSA because you will need that number on the application. But otherwise, as far as prerequisites for us to come out, if you are interested and would like us to, you can contact us and we will.
Does WHF do property consultations all over Texas or just in your area?
Yes, so we are statewide. I am in the greater Houston region, but we do have several other independent contractors and employees throughout the state of Texas that can come out and help assess your property. So if you are somewhere outside the greater Houston region, which is not my domain, I would recommend just going to our general email that I had provided earlier. And you can email us. We also do have a landowner form on our website that you can fill out and kind of describe your property to us, and we'll get you in touch with the conservationist closest to you that can be available and help.
And then another question, do you ever work with city local government?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Do you ever work with city or local governments?
Yes, we do.
Yes, yeah, I thought I saw that. There was a school prairie, so I think that's it. Is there a best practice to take Bermuda grass out, solarization, digging up?
Okay. Well, there's several ways to go about that. I will say Bermuda grass is really hard to get rid of without using some sort of chemical treatment. And that is one of those projects that I would recommend cover crops as well on. So I would suggest looking into doing some sort of chemical application and then probably applying several cover crops, so like a winter and a summer cover crop, to really help build up the organic matter in the soil and reduce the Bermuda grass from resprouting, because even after you spray chemicals, it tends to still come back. But that's how I would probably go about that.
Right. Anybody else have any questions they want to unmute for? Oh wait, I see one more in our Q&A. Mike has a question. What first steps politically and physically would you advise towards restoring city property heavily invested with buffalo grass, guinea grass, and Bermuda? It's a lot of things. Bad.
Can you repeat that one more time for me?
What first steps politically and physically would you advise towards restoring a city-owned property heavily invested with buffalo grass, guinea grass, and Bermuda?
Gotcha.
South Texas, probably. I don't know.
Okay. So same kind of with just even the Bermuda grass, I would recommend chemical treatment and cover crops as well still. You know, with that being a city property, the cover crops might be a little harder to do, but that's where I think, talking about kind of ways to mitigate the negative perspectives of that is always through education. And so if you can provide signage during the time that a cover crop is being established to really talk to people about what it is that you're doing and why, I think that would be one way to go ahead and kind of mitigate that negative response you're going to get. But because you're dealing with pretty much all invasive grasses to start with, definitely would still recommend chemical treatment, going through and doing a couple cover crop applications before really putting down native seed. You can also try, if you wanted to, you could also, do a chemical treatment and try some other methods such as mulching, and doing a thick mulch to create more of a solarization over it too. But I don't think just going in with chemicals is going to get rid of it. I don't think just going in with cover crops is going to get rid of it. It's going to take a couple different methods to really gain the control that you're going to want over those invasives.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. We're running a couple of minutes over, but not too much. And great questions. And so thank you all for participating. And we will have a link with all those resources. So if you didn't get them all downloaded, don't fret. You can get those after conference. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Michelle, for all your help. I appreciate it.